Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us from the Ohio AgNet, the voice you know with the News You Trust studio, sponsored by the Family Forest Carbon Program, where we help family forest owners get paid to improve the health of their woods. I'm Joe Everett. A quick calendar reminder, celebrate the 38th Annual Armed Forces Day with the Findlay Military Association, May 15th through the 18th at the Hancock County Fairgrounds. To learn more, visit FindlayMilitaryShow.org for the full schedule of events. Sponsored by Ohio Logistics. Also, stay ahead in soybean farming with the latest research and insights. Follow the Ohio Field Leader program at ocj.com, brought to you by the Ohio Soybean Council and their checkoff. While the May World Agricultural Supply and Demand Estimates report is calling for a 2025 through the 2026 U.S. corn outlook with record supplies and total use and higher ending stocks. The corn crop is projected at 15.8 billion bushels, up 6% from a year ago. With the total U.S. corn supply rising more than use, 2025 through 2026 ending stocks are up 385 million bushels from last year. The season average farm price is projected at $4.20 a bushel, down 15 cents. The 2025 through the 2026 outlook for the U.S. soybeans calls for slightly lower supplies, higher crush, reduced exports, and lower ending stocks compared to the prior marketing year. The season average soybean price is forecasted at $10.25 per bushel, compared with the $9.95 per bushel during the previous year. The wheat outlook is for increased supplies, modestly high domestic use, reduced exports, and higher stocks. The season average farm price is $5.30 per bushel, down 20 cents from last year. Now let's check in with Brianna Smith for this week's Between the Rows.
It's time for this week's Between the Rows update. This update is brought to you by Seed Genetics Direct, business with a handshake, not a 3-year contract. We head to Fairfield County now, where Joe McCandlish is keeping an eye on conditions and progress in his part of the state.
A good bit of corn popping up already. Corn, you're able to start growing pretty good. Beans, you're starting to pop up here and there. I've seen some fields there as well. I know one thing right now with all this wet and warm weather that we had, fungicide pressure and pressure of diseases on wheat has been super strong right now. So a lot of guys have kind of switched gears and try to get some wheat sprayed as well.
Let's go from southeast to northwest Ohio and check in with Doug Dirkscheide of Wood County.
Yeah, so we've been wet here the last week. Really nothing's been done the last week. I mean, stuff's up. The guys planted early, corn and bean wise. So we had like between 2 and 3 inches there last week. So stuff's starting to get crusted in too. They're talking rain, a chance every day really from tomorrow through Saturday up here. Some guys are hoping for a little bit of that to maybe get some of this stuff out of the ground, and everybody else doesn't want it to rain so we could get something planted.
That's it for this week's Between the Rows update, brought to you by Seed Genetics Direct. For more from the field and the full update, visit ohioagnet.com. I'm Brianna Smith reporting. We'll see you in a few weeks.
Thanks, Brianna, for the update. Well, over the weekend, the United States and China agreed to temporarily lower tariffs on each other's products, which Bloomberg called a dramatic ratcheting down of trade tensions between the two largest economies in the world. For the next 90 days, the combined 145% levies on most Chinese imports will be dropped to 30%, including a rate tied to fentanyl by May 14th. The 125% Chinese duties on U.S. goods will drop to 10%. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent said the two sides are in agreement that they do not want to decouple from each other. We'd love to see China more open to U.S. goods, Bessent said. We hope that there will be a purchase agreement that pulls what is our largest bilateral trade deficit back into balance. The tariff pause with China could at least temporarily help calm some of the concerns from the U.S. agriculture industry about exports. Stay tuned. We'll be back with today's weather after this.
Farmers, be safe moving from field to field this season. Keep your warning lights clean and in good working order for roadway travel. Take a few minutes to check your lights and reflectors and make sure your slow-moving vehicle emblem is visible as you share the road. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. This message provided to you by the Ohio AgNet, OSU Extension Ag Safety and Health Team, and this station.
You're tuning in on the Ohio AgNet. Today's weather brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. Here's the forecast.
More clouds over Ohio through today. I'm Chief Meteorologist Ryan Martin. Let's take a look at the forecast update. Here's what's going on. We still have that upper level low sitting to our south. Cloud cover trying to rotate around that, and I don't think we see as much to start the day today as maybe what we finished yesterday, but scattered shower action is coming back this afternoon into this evening. I think we have to pencil in another few hundredths to maybe half an inch for tonight. We see moisture lingering tomorrow, clouds and on again, off again showers, looking at another few hundredths to few tenths. So the next couple of days are definitely damp here. If you miss out on moisture, great, but we're not going to be seeing a lot of evaporation either, not a lot of sunshine. Thursday looks sunny and warm. Strong southwest winds ahead of our next front. That front tries to sneak in overnight Thursday night into Friday. Showers and potentially heavy thunderstorms with coverage at around 70% of the region. I'm looking for 1/4 to 1.5 inches of rain. Could see a secondary surge of thunderstorm activity in southern Ohio overnight Friday night into early Saturday. Then the balance of the weekend turns out partly to mostly sunny, dry, and warm. Next week starts the same way. Great start to the week, Monday, Tuesday, early Wednesday, before our frontal boundary comes at midweek next week. More rain and thunderstorms there. I'm meteorologist Ryan Martin.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, even with the weather challenges, farmers have been still working to make planting progress. Let's see how they're getting along. Coverage of the Ohio Crop Progress Report is sponsored by Unleaded 88. Save on fuel with a blue handle. Fill up with Unleaded 88. Discover more at ohiocornandwheat.org. Starting with the national numbers, corn planting jumped 22 percentage points last week to reach 62% complete nationwide. As of Sunday, that puts current planting progress at 15 percentage points ahead of last year's 47% and 6 percentage points ahead of the 5-year average of 56%. As for its crop development, 28% of the corn was emerged as of Sunday. That's 7 points ahead of last year and the 5-year average of 21%. As we look to soybeans, an estimated 48% of the intended soybean acreage was planted as of Sunday. That's 14 points ahead of last year's 34% and 11 points ahead of the 5-year average of 37%. As for the soybean crop development, 17% of the soybeans had emerged as of Sunday. That is 2 points ahead of last year and 6 points ahead of the 5-year average of 11%. Now taking a quick look at winter wheat, an estimated 54% of the winter wheat was rated good to excellent as of May 11th, up 3 points from 51% the previous week, and 4 points ahead of last year's 50%. As for the crop development, 53% of the winter wheat was headed nationwide as of Sunday. That's 2 percentage points behind last year's 55%, but 8 points ahead of the 5-year average of 45%. Now looking at your numbers from the Buckeye State, corn planted this week landed at 25% complete this week. That jumped 3 points over last week, but is 10 points behind last year and is 2 points behind the 5-year average. Corn emerge is at 14% complete this week. That jumped 10 points over last week, but is 9 points behind last year, but is still 5 points ahead of the 5-year average. Oats planted are at 82% complete this week. That jumped 8 points over last week, is 2 points ahead of last year, and is 4 points ahead of the 5-year average. Oats and merge are at 67%. That jumped 27 points over last week, and is 26 points ahead of last year, and is 17 points ahead of the 5-year average. Soybeans planted were pegged at 25% complete this week. That jumped 2 points over last week, is 1 point behind last year, and is 3 points ahead of the 5-year average. Soybeans emerged are at 11% this week. That jumped 10 points over last week, but is 5 points behind last year, but is still 4 points ahead of the 5-year average. Winter wheat joining was rated at 88% this week. That jumped 13 points over last week and is 4 points ahead of the 5-year average. And winter wheat headed is at 14% complete this week. That jumped 7 points over last week, but is 18 points behind last year, but is still 3 points ahead of the 5-year average. As for the crop condition for winter wheat, 65% of the crop was rated good to excellent. Well, United States Ag Secretary Brooke Rollins announced the suspension of live cattle, horse, and bison imports through the U.S. ports of entry along the southern border due to the northward expansion of the New World screwworm virus. While we are working with Mexico on responding to the screwworm, it's my duty to take all steps within my control to protect the U.S. livestock industry from this devastating pest, Rollins said. The protection of our animals and the safety of our nation's food supply is a national security issue of the utmost importance. She also said that once the United States sees increased surveillance and eradication efforts and the positive results of those actions, the United States Department of Agriculture will remain committed to opening the borders to livestock trade. It's not just about politics or punishing Mexico, but rather it's about food and animal safety. The first case of NWS in Mexico was reported to the United States in November of 2024. Well, while small to mid-sized feedlots sit empty, while Packer-owned lots remain full. Bill Bullard, CEO of RCAF USA, says that trend could lead to continued decline in independent farm feeders.
We have extremely high prices because of the incredibly tight supplies. And that means the feeder cattle that would be moving into feedlots are in short supply. And so those prices have skyrocketed to never before seen prices. However, the fat cattle market is not keeping pace with the feeder cattle market. That means there's a lot of independent feeders out there that would like to fill their feed yards, but they can't pencil out a profit, nor can they hedge their purchases.
The drop in independent farm feeders could shrink the market outlets for cow-calf and yearling operators.
This tight supply isn't one that is caused exclusively by the drought. We have been reducing the size of our herd for decades, and the drought has simply exacerbated the situation. So we have got to initiate some major reforms to put this industry back on a proper course that will allow our independent livestock producers in the United States the opportunity to be profitable. And right now, even with higher prices, we're seeing some segments of our industry, the feedlot segment, is having an extremely difficult time staying in business.
Again, that was RCAF USA CEO Bill Bullard. Stay tuned. We'll be back with your grain analysis and your overnight markets after this. Get ready to start bidding on a massive variety of heavy equipment and vehicles in the Ritchie Brothers Great Lakes Regional event happening May 14th and 15th. More than 3,700 items will cross the auction block during a one-of-a-kind sale, including everything from truck tractors, van trucks, and trailers to excavators, scrapers, and equipment for construction and landscaping. Registration for this unique unreserved auction is entirely free and open to the public. Visit rbauction.com to learn more. Again, that's rbauction.com. It's now time for today's market analysis, which is brought to you by the Louis Dreyfus Company, excited to be building the newest state-of-the-art soybean crush facility in Upper Sandusky, Ohio. Call 574-566-2113 for information on soybean marketing to LDC. Here's Ryan Martin.
Grain markets mixed to start the week as we moved through the Monday trading session. Multiple things hitting the marketplace. Let's start with early on in the day, actually coming out of the overnight. News that U.S. and China reached a trade agreement in principle really drove the marketplace. The details as they came to light mean that we're far from having this thing fixed and done long term, but the idea is here for the next 90 days, tariffs from the U.S. on China's goods go from 145% down to 30%. Chinese tariffs on U.S. goods go from 125% down to 10%. That got the market excited. We did not see right away it coming to the U.S. for purchases such as soybeans, but it sounds like, at least from the China state-owned grain companies, Sinograin being one of them, there might be some interest trying to surface its way through the next few days. Corn did not play along once we got to the middle part of the day. Wheat didn't either, because the other big story from Monday was the WASDE report, supply and demand estimates, and those were kind of interesting here as we were not necessarily right in line with what the trade was expecting. On old crop, we actually saw a little bit of a reduction in the ending stocks due to estimates for exports being moved higher on corn. Also saw exports switched on soybeans, which probably locks in these new crop, or rather old crop carryouts on through the new crop year. There was a little bit of an interesting move in the corn and soybeans on ending stocks for new crop. A new record export total being floated out there on corn put the ending stocks for new crop down under $2 billion. That was much lower than the trade guess. And soybean ending stocks under $300 million. And that is lower than last year, and it came in fairly in the middle of a wide trade guess overall. Lots of things to discuss and unpack here. Soybeans finished the day on a strong run to the upside. Corn kind of faltered. I'm Ryan Martin.
Thanks, Ryan. Now looking at your overnight trade brought to us by Seed Consultants. Simply better performance online at seedconsultants.com. July corn 447.5, down a half. December new crop corn 446, up a half. July soybeans 1068.25, down 3 cents. November soybeans 1054.75, down 2 3/4. July wheat 512.25, down 3 cents. In livestock from yesterday's close, June live cattle 216.82, up $2.15. May lean hogs 90.72, up 35 cents, and August feeder cattle 306.37, up $6.07. Thanks for joining us and have a great morning, everyone. This is the Ohio AgNet.